Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today we'll be reacting to another Napoleonic Wars video. Today we have Friedland, not Friedland, but Friedland in 1807. If you're new here, this is what we do. We react, we learn, we talk about history, and learning a lot about the Napoleonic Wars today. I'm glad you're here with me. I appreciate you. Let's jump into it, shall we? Let's go.
One week before Christmas 1806, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the Polish city of Warsaw, then part of Prussia. A year had passed since his great victory over the Austrians and Russians at Austerlitz, and 2 months since he'd hammered the Prussians at Jena. But Russia still had powerful forces in the field, the most important of which was the Russian First Army, commanded by General Bennigsen. Napoleon would not be master of Europe until it was defeated, and Russia and Prussia forced to make peace.
And they're formidable. Like, we've seen the Battle of Eylau, like, it was pretty much a draw, and there was just so many losses, and it was just horrible. Especially in the blizzard, it was just not a good scene.
But that winter, Napoleon's first attempt to trap Bennigsen near Pultusk got bogged down in thick Polish mud. The Russians withdrew to Białystok. The French army, half-starved and frozen, was ordered into winter quarters. While in Warsaw, Napoleon began a famous affair with a young Polish noblewoman, Marie Walewska. In the late 18th century, the once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been swallowed up by its neighbours, Russia, Austria, and Prussia.
Was that political or was that conquest?
In a series of annexations known as partitions.
Oh, okay.
Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map.
Wow.
Now, Polish patriots looked to Napoleon as their savior.
We saw the same thing in, where'd we see that? Was it Northern Italy?
Praying that his victories against their occupiers would lead to the rebirth of a Polish state. Marie Walewska became Napoleon's mistress in order to further this cause. Ordinary French soldiers, however, had little love for Poland. It was impoverished, freezing, and they missed home.
A lot of them have been gone for so long, and they've been in so many different campaigns. It's just, I wonder what does that do to the mind? I know it numbs it first, but besides that, yeah.
Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide.
Wow.
Marshal Ney, commanding 6th Corps, sent patrols towards Heilsberg, looking for better quarters. What they found were Russian and Prussian soldiers on the move. They'd stumbled into a surprise winter attack by Bennigsen. Napoleon quickly laid a trap for the Russian army, ordering Ney and Bernadotte to retreat and lure Bennigsen west, while he led the rest of the army north to fall on his flank and rear. But the Russians captured a French courier carrying the Emperor's orders to Marshal Bernadotte. Bennigsen, now warned of the trap, ordered a retreat, fighting a series of rearguard skirmishes against the pursuing French. But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau.
Again? Wait, we might be cross. Okay, so this video, I don't know when this video was put out because we already did the Battle of Eylau, and we already seen this quote, so it might just be a video that recaps this. That's exactly what it is.
The Battle of Eylau, fought over 2 days, was one of the most brutal of the Napoleonic Wars, fought in freezing conditions.
And I will say, Battle of Eylau, I was very harsh on Azuro. I understand. He could only do what he could do, and he was really bad. Like, not wounded, but like in bad health.
With neither side backing down. Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps, advancing into the face of a snowstorm, lost its way and was cut to pieces by Russian cannon fire. 5 French Eagles were lost. Napoleon's army was only saved by a devastating massed cavalry charge by 10,000 horsemen, led by the fearless Marshal Murat, and remembered as one of the great cavalry charges in history. At Eylau, for the first time as emperor, Napoleon failed to win a clear victory on the battlefield. He and the Russians covered up the true scale of their losses, but both sides are estimated to have lost 1/3 of their armies in the carnage.
Yeah, it was just a bloody massacre, as it stated.
After the horrors of Eylau, both armies sought time to rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French 10th Corps under Marshal Lefebvre besieged Danzig, held by 13,000 Prussians under General Kalkreuth. The city came under heavy French bombardment and infantry assault. After 8 weeks, with no prospect of reinforcement, the Prussian garrison surrendered on the 27th of May. Napoleon's northern sea flank was now secure against any possible Russian landing. The French emperor now commanded an army 190,000
That's a ton of people.
strong, against just 115,000 Russian and Prussian troops. But it was Bennigsen who moved first, launching a surprise attack against Ney's 6th Corps on the 5th of June. Ney conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped. Bennigsen, having lost the element of surprise, and with Napoleon advancing, retreated once more. 4 days later at Heilsberg, the French lost 10,000 men in a botched assault against Russian defenses.
So that's another, would we consider that a loss?
But the Russians continued their retreat the next day. Napoleon thought Bennigsen would head north to Königsberg, but instead he retreated northeast, keeping to the east bank of the Aller River. So when Napoleon's army marched north, it was Marshal Lannes' Reserve Corps on his right flank that next encountered the Russian army, near the small town of Friedland.
All right, there we go, Friedland. Ride your horse into the ground if you have to, but tell the Emperor we're fighting the entire Russian army, Mr. Lon said. Okay. The entire Russian army?
In the late afternoon of the 13th of June, Russian cavalry scouts informed General Bennigsen that they'd found a single French corps at Friedland. Bennigsen decided he had time to cross the Aller River and smash this isolated corps before the rest of the French army could arrive to save it. And he ordered his army to begin crossing the river. Marshal Lannes, commanding 16,000 men and facing 46,000 Russians, sent an urgent message to Napoleon that he was under attack from the main Russian army. Then he fought a skillful delaying action, hiding the weakness of his force behind a large screen of skirmishers, while gradually yielding ground to the enemy.
So basically, he is screwed without reinforcements at this point. And look at the top, the right-wing cavalry. It's like 4-1 up there.
Lannes was still holding off the Russians, as darkness fell. That night, Russian engineers built 3 pontoon bridges at Friedland to speed the movement of troops over the river. But Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a major battle,
they'll have nowhere to go and their backs to the river.
His army would have to fight with its back to the river and the steep banks of the Mill Stream dividing its left wing from its right. Bennigsen had also badly underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's Grande Armée would react.
And we've seen it. Napoleon's army has moved in lightning speed continuously.
The first French reinforcements arrived that night. The Emperor himself wasn't far behind.
We won't catch the enemy making a mistake like this twice, Napoleon says.
By dawn on the 14th of June, about 40,000 Russians had crossed to the west bank of the Aller River. Bennigsen ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf to turn the French left flank. But French cavalry reinforcements, led by General Grouchy, intercepted the Russians. In more than an hour of charge and countercharge, the French horsemen finally drove the Russians back.
I'll say it 1,000 times. These drawings are amazing.
Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps now arrived to reinforce the French center.
So they got a line now. They get a whole line, and I can't tell the distance between them, but it looks pretty even, doesn't it? I think the Russians still have a little bit more troops. I'm not seeing too many cannons on the French side. We see some cannons on the Russian side here. But I mean, honestly, the one thing that the French do have going for them, if it's not numbers, it's leverage. Because like we talked about, the river is to their back, meaning they can't move back, they can't give up ground. It's difficult. They have to win. Like the Russians have to win here early, or it's not going to be a good ending.
In Sortlac Wood, General Oudinot's elite Grenadier Division fought stubbornly against Prince Bagration's left wing, but was outnumbered by the Russians and gradually pushed back. Around noon on a sweltering day, Napoleon himself arrived. He was soon followed by 1st Corps, commanded by General Victor, standing in for the...
Oh my goodness, look how many corps are coming with him. At least 3 right there. Well, no, the one's the Imperial Guard.
Wounded Marshal Bernadotte, as well as Ney's 6th Corps and the Imperial Guard under Marshal Bessières. The date, the 14th of June, held special significance for Napoleon. It was the 7th anniversary of his great victory over the Austrians at Marengo. A good omen, he declared.
A lot of anniversaries, I think, was it Austerlitz? Wasn't that a year after being emperor?
The battle then entered a lull as Napoleon assessed the situation, saw Bennigsen's dangerous position, and issued orders for an attack to take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now faced the full might of Napoleon's army and issued orders for a retreat.
Yeah, we just talked about this. If they get out quickly, they might get away. This is the objective. Advance looking neither right or left. Bore into this thick mass, cost what it may. Who said it? Napoleon and Marshal Ney.
But before Bennigsen's retreat could get underway, at 5:30 p.m, 3 salvos from the French guns signalled the start of Napoleon's attack. It was led by Ney's 6th Corps on the right wing, who first cleared Bagration's infantry from Sortlack Wood. But
I mean, they're just pushing them back. I mean, I think they're giving ground at the same time, but it's a good start for the French.
as Ney's troops left the cover of the trees, they came under heavy fire from Russian cannon across the river. As the French attack faltered, Prince Bagration rallied his men and launched a cavalry counterattack.
By the way, what a great idea to leave some cannon on the other side of the river, because you can't attack it, per se.
Ney's corps retreated. But now General Victor's 1st Corps came up on his left. Its artillery commander, General Senarmont, advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot.
What is case shot? A new term, case shot.
Hundreds of Russians were mown down within minutes. Under this onslaught, Bagration's men began to waver and then retreat. Around 7 p.m, the Russian Imperial Guard launched a desperate counterattack to try to halt the French advance on Friedland. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. As exploding shells began to start fires in Friedland, the French centre and left wing joined the attack.
The right side hasn't retreated yet. Uh-oh.
With its only escape route under threat, the entire Russian army began a panicked retreat towards the river.
Are we going to see a lot of people drown?
But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned trying to cross the river, others killed or captured. North of Friedland, some units were able to escape across a ford or along the riverbank. But there was no disguising the Russians' terrible defeat.
That's horrible. Wow.
The Battle of Friedland was one of the most decisive victories of Napoleon's career.
Looks like it.
At the cost of 10,000 casualties, he had inflicted twice as many losses on the Russians. About 20,000 men, killed, wounded or taken prisoner. 40% of Bennigsen's army. The Prussians abandoned Königsberg the next day, which was occupied by Soult's 4th Corps, while Bennigsen's shattered army retreated across the river Niemen into Russia. Tsar Alexander's advisors implored him to make peace with Napoleon. He accepted their advice, and a ceasefire was agreed.
Does that mean the Third Coalition is donezo? Perhaps I was happiest at Tilsit. I found myself victorious, dictating laws, having emperors and kings pay me court. Okay.
Alexander and Napoleon met for the first time aboard a raft in the middle of the river Niemen, near Tilsit, and developed an immediate rapport. Tilsit proved to be one of history's great diplomatic summits, as the two emperors feted each other for days, with banquets, parades and concerts, then discussed affairs late into the night. A friendship of sorts developed, while Russia's former ally, King Frederick William of Prussia, was left out in the cold. And it was Prussia who would lose most in the treaties of Tilsit, signed 2 weeks later. 1/3 of Prussian territory was taken away to create the new Kingdom of Westphalia, to be ruled by Napoleon's 22-year-old brother, Jérôme.
Continuism on the nepotism.
and the Duchy of Warsaw, to be ruled by the King of Saxony, which Polish patriots hoped would prove a stepping stone on the road to their own state. Polish troops were recruited into the Grande Armée, with Polish lancers even forming part of Napoleon's elite Imperial Guard. Russia only had to give up the Ionian Islands, as Alexander accepted an alliance with
The Ionian Islands, which is to the west of Greece, are owned by Russia? How did that happen?
Napoleon, that left the French Emperor master of Europe.
For now?
Alexander even agreed to join the continental system, Napoleon's economic blockade of Great Britain, which banned British ships and goods from all French-controlled ports.
For now, and we'll see in the future how Russia will not totally agree with that in the future, which will cause something called the invasion of Russia.
The system had been established the previous winter by Napoleon's Berlin Decree. Napoleon hoped that by cutting off British trade with Europe, he'd cause financial chaos and political upheaval in Britain, allowing him to make a favourable peace. There was just one problem. The continental system didn't work. Not only was it impossible to enforce and undermined by widespread smuggling, the system damaged French trade just as much as British trade. The decisive weapon in this economic war would prove to be the British Royal Navy, which that summer ensured its continued naval dominance by launching a preemptive strike against the neutral Danish fleet at Copenhagen, capturing their warships before they could fall into Napoleon's hands.
I mean, one thing that we can say about the British is they're going to have superiority at sea.
Royal Navy squadrons blockaded all major French ports, seizing any ships trading with France, while ensuring British merchants could continue to trade overseas in relative safety.
Wow.
The Navy even seized the tiny Danish island of Heligoland.
We did a video on Heligoland. Those poor souls. Heligoland is like one of those islands that gets passed back and forth to whoever's the victor, and then eventually it's going to get passed to Germany in the future, and then Germany is going to use it as a satellite island, basically. So Heligoland is an interesting one. We have a video on that if you guys want to check that out.
As a base for smuggling British goods into Europe. But most disastrously for Napoleon, the continental system would draw him into two conflicts that proved ruinous for his empire. The first would be fought in the Iberian Peninsula, where Napoleon decided to force Britain's ally, Portugal, to join the continental system. In November 1807, French troops, supported by their Spanish ally, invaded the country.
Really?
The Portuguese royal family fled to their colony of Brazil, as the French occupied Lisbon without a fight. It looked as though Napoleon had won yet another easy victory. But the Peninsular War was just beginning.
Wow. So much happening, guys. So much happening. Like, the Iberian side was kind of unknown to me. The British Navy has taken the continental system and put it on its head. Took islands. They're making trade more of a monopoly for Great Britain, so it's kind of backfiring to France. And I think Russia's going to see this, and we know they're going to see it, and they're going to side with Britain because you want to win. Every independent country wants the best thing for their citizens. And Russia's going to make a choice soon. I appreciate you guys. Subscribe if you haven't already. I love doing these videos. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bye-bye.